Good evening. Welcome to the Wednesday, October 14th, 2020 meeting of the Moscow Planning and Zoning Commission. And we will begin, I'd like to call the meeting to order. We will begin with approval of the minutes from September 23rd. Are there any additions, corrections, deletions, or is everybody okay with them? Okay. And somebody want to so move?
I move to accept.
Thank you, Nels.
I'll second.
Thank you. Okay, so, thank you, Mike. Our next item is an opportunity for public comment. It's people who want to speak to us about matters that aren't on our agenda tonight or pending before the Planning and Zoning Commission are welcome to come up and speak. Is anyone wanting to do that? Who's in attendance? Okay. Well, it's an opportunity out there, if anybody might be listening, to come in the future. Okay, item 3 is a public hearing, and it's a proposal for comprehensive plan land use designation and zoning designation for an approximately 150-acre property proposed to be annexed into the city of Moscow and located directly west of Highway 95 and south of the current city limits boundary. And Mike Ray will give us a presentation.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Commissioners. So before you tonight, we have a public hearing for a couple of items, a comp plan, land use designation amendment, as well as a zoning designation amendment for property generally west of Highway 95 and south of the current city limits boundary. And the applicant is Schweitzer Engineering Laboratories, and they're proposing to annex a property. It's approximately 150 acres, 154 acres in total, and it's located directly west of 95 and south of current city limits. So the proposed comp plan amendment, it's currently designated as a combination of auto-urban commercial, high-density residential, auto-urban residential, and rural and agricultural. So a conglomeration of a number of designations, and the proposal is to combine those into the auto-urban commercial designation for the property. Zoning is currently agricultural forestry, and the proposal to rezone to the motor business zone. And just to kind of recite state statutes, so prior to annexation, planning and zoning commissions are required to review the property for conformance with comp plan, as well as zoning designations upon annexations. The City Council is the body that acts upon annexations. So we'll just be making a recommendation on those two items tonight. So this is the subject property, 154 acres outlined in red on the center of your screen. You can see the current city limits boundary here in purple. So ended up here on the north property line. It's faint, but you can see it's primarily surrounded by agricultural properties to the west, to the south. There are some single-family dwellings intermingled, primarily rural dwellings. This is Early Bird Supply here to the east. Wassencarry Construction over here to the east as well. Germer has an office here, Mundy's, as well as a couple single-family dwellings. And then you have Prime Land, agricultural here to the northeast. This is an area that has primarily commercial and single-family homes in it. Dale's Boats is in that area. To the north, you have a couple manufactured home parks, one here and one here. That's Abiel to the east. And then you have ITD's current service yard to the north as well. This property happens to be the city Playfields property that hasn't been developed, but you do have Paradise Creek, or actually, excuse me, South Fork of the Palouse River that extends through that property and ends up touching the northern boundary at the subject property as well. So just a closer view of that area. And then this is the current comp plan configuration. So you can see it's just a mixture of this kind of darkish orange-red color is high-density residential. You've got a auto-urban commercial designation in the more of a magenta color. The yellow color is auto urban residential, and then the slight green there is the agricultural designation. Looking at the surrounding properties, also include that similar mixture of those designations. You do have the Playfields property owned by the city here that's in parks and open space designation. And then you have the current area city impact boundary, which extends in this area. So this would be the proposed comp plan change, and so we would just essentially be designating that entire property to the auto urban commercial designation. Taking a look at what the auto urban commercial designation does in the comp plan, it's intended to provide for commercial services and developments that are motor vehicle oriented or those which require large amounts of land. Areas should be located adjacent to existing commercial developments and along major arterials where vehicle traffic can be accommodated. And then it points us to the motor business zone as being the most appropriate zoning designation for the properties. So that brings us to the zoning configuration of the area. You can see it, the subject property is ag forest currently. There are some, these are not currently colored because they're out in the county presently, but these are ag forest as well, completely surrounding to the south, across the Highway 95 to the east. You have a mixture of some motor business properties with Early Bird and Germer and Mundy's. And it's not reflected in this map for some reason, but with the proposal, these are current here, the properties that were recently rezoned to motor business to the northeast. You also have a portion of prime land that's in the ag forest zone. The other portion to the north is an industrial. And then this light blue color is the motor business zone. So primarily along the highway corridors and our major arterials like Palouse River Drive to the north. Those corridors are designated in the motor business zone. And then looking at the city park property is in Farm Ranch currently. And then we also have Fountains Industrial Park area in the industrial zone there to the northeast. So this would be the proposal, essentially rezoning the 154 acres to the motor business zone. And then looking at what the zoning code says about the motor business zone. Purpose is to provide for location and grouping of compatible uses having similar operation as they involve enterprises which depend primarily on transient motor vehicle-based trade. And then concentrating those services. City intends to increase public convenience when utilizing within the regulation to allow activities to render the maximum service. And really a wide variety of uses allowed in the motor business zone, anywhere between retail enterprises, offices, eating and drinking establishments, to laundromats, light manufacturing uses are allowed. Also a wide range of residential uses as well. Taking a look at the access, streets and traffic and utilities in the area. 95 is designated as a national highway. In this area, it's developed a 24-foot wide paved roadway with northbound, southbound travel lanes and minimal gravel shoulders on either side. And there is a future alignment, realignment of 95. And so in the future, the old 95 would essentially become either contained within the county or the city. And those two entities would take over maintenance of that portion. Taking a look at our capital improvement plan, we'll go over kind of a map with where the utilities are located in a minute, but sanitary sewer is proposed to be extended approximately 1,600 feet further south of the nearest main, which is the bridge that's located by the South Fork of the Palouse River. And then water mains are presently about 1,200 feet to the south of that bridge, and those will be extended about another 400 feet down what will be the future old 95 right-of-way. And the schedule of that construction is intended to occur next year sometime. And this would just be the utility layout that I was referring to. You've got the South Fork of the Palouse Bridge here. You can see this blue line that represents the water main that's extended down to essentially the middle of the prime land property. And then the nearest sanitary sewer lines are in green here, and the closest main in the street is actually by the bridge, and so that'll be extended that 1,600 feet south, end up somewhere in this vicinity here. And you can see the right-of-way acquisition that's been occurring for the Highway 95 realignment. You can see where that ends up coming in, essentially by the grain silos of Primeland's property here to the south. There will be some type of future intersection realignment to tie in Old 95 with a future realignment of the new 95. And then we also have been working with a couple of different property owners on islands that are going to potentially be created as part of this. And so you have a small triangular shaped piece here at the south of ABL Mobile Home Park, as well as another triangular shaped property that's currently vacant here, with the current city limits boundary in purple and the subject property being proposed to be annexed into the city. You would be left with a few different islands here. And so we've been working with property owners to potentially annex those in as part of this proposal when it advances on to council, if it should advance at council next month. So just wanted to make you aware of that. So with that, staff's recommendation is that the Planning and Zoning Commission conduct the public hearing, and upon consideration of testimony received, number one, recommend approval of the proposed comp plan change to just the auto urban commercial designation, and then recommend approval of the rezone to the motor business zone, and both of those with no conditions. And then to direct staff to prepare reasoned statements of relevant criteria and standards to be reviewed at the November 4th regularly scheduled meeting. I'd certainly be able to answer any questions that you might have.
Do any commissioners have any questions for Mike Ray? How about our commissioners on Zoom? We can't see you at the moment, but do you have any questions?
No questions.
I'm good.
Okay. Well,
I
go ahead,
guess
Nell.
the
Yeah.
only question, you talked about the water line coming out. You feel comfortable with any city services, most sewer and water both, that won't be an issue?
Not an issue, no. It's anticipated that at some point in the future, all these properties along 95 are going to be developed. And it's, like I had mentioned, it's part of our capital improvement plan, and it was slated for construction in 2021. And so it was already scheduled to be extended into this area. We have a lift station there right at the bridge for sewer. And so we've indicated that we have adequate capacity to serve this property.
It's my only small question.
Okay, other questions? Well, at this point, I guess thank you, Mike. We'll open the public hearing and invite spokespersons for the applicant. If someone's here to, please state your name and the town you're from, or the place you're from, or county you're from.
Good evening, council members, as well as guests, as well as staff. My name is Jana Schulteis. I'm with Schweitzer Engineering. I am based in Pullman, Washington, and briefly, Washington has been our headquarters and continues to be our headquarters worldwide. We operate in 107 locations worldwide in 2.2 million square feet. We have expansion ground in many different locations, but our Pullman campus over the last 30 years has begun to become a little tight. We have about 20 acres left there. We have expansion ground in Charlotte, North Carolina. We just finished a 100,000 square foot addition at the foot of Purdue University. Beautiful new facility there. We have expansion ground down in San Luis Potosi, Mexico. But we love the Palouse. We have been on the Palouse for 35 years. We have over 2,500 people based in Pullman. 630 drive from Moscow every single day to Pullman. We are committed to this community. We can be anywhere in the world, and we're choosing the Palouse very strategically. We looked at a lot of different parcels, and I mean a lot. And so we gravitate towards the states that are friendly to do business in. We have enjoyed our Lewiston facility. We've enjoyed our Pullman facility. We bring jobs and economic development in a myriad of different ways. We partner with the chambers and the universities. We've endowed chairs at all the universities that we essentially are in their communities. And so we try our hardest to be good neighbors and also grow and thrive along with the communities that we are in. One thing that I think is quite important here is we're vested in this area. This land is a strategic land reserve for us. So the annexation request that I'm here to ask for tonight is really to prepare a parcel for development on the Palouse, so we can continue being here and being a community partner. We've talked about in our community meetings, we don't really have a project that we're bringing forward, but this attempt tonight is to really prepare it. It's a process that takes a few months, and it usually takes me about 2 full years to bring a project to fruition when we have the need to bring something new to the business. And so the annexation request is to really make sure that the land that we just have purchased from the Deaston family is ready for development. We continue to work with the existing farmer and continue, like in Pullman, to farm the ground that we don't have development needs for. We enjoy the Palouse and have really had a very warm welcome from our neighborhood meeting as well as from the city. It's been a pleasure to purchase this property and also expand our footprint on the Palouse. And it's my pleasure to answer any questions that may come tonight. So with that, thank you very much.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions at this time?
Wendy, yeah, I do.
Okay. Hi,
Hey,
is that
Dana,
Rob?
hi. Sorry that I wasn't there to say hello to you personally. It's good to see you again.
Good to see
My one question is, does the motor business designation give you enough flexibility for potential future uses?
It's a very good question, Rob. Thank you for the question. The zoning opportunities, we didn't really know at first what would give us the most flexibility, and we believe this one is very broad in its opportunities. And so in Pullman, we're in an industrial zone, and we like the industrial zone, so I thought for sure that's the zone we would go into. But after talking with the planner, we realized that this is a more appropriate next step for us to be able to give us the flexibility as business comes. Is it offices? Is it something new? I don't know. But we think that the comprehensive plan and the zone mapping seems appropriate.
Okay, great, thanks.
You bet. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions while we have you on the stand? Okay, well, thank you. Well, are there others who would like to speak in favor or of the application?
Got to take this off for a minute. I can't even breathe. Hi, guys. My name is Rick Beebe. I've lived here since 1961. My son usually sits up there.
Right.
We certainly are in favor all the accolades in the world go to the Bills, whether it's Bill Lambert or Bill Belknap or Mike Ray or Gary Reedner. What a wonderful thing that they have been able to put together as far as the city of Moscow is concerned. I've seen development over the last 60 years. This is one of the most positive things that has ever occurred as far as I'm concerned with respect to Moscow, Idaho. We certainly don't want to put a wrinkle in. We want to ask your indulgence a little bit. 14 years ago, I talked to my business associate, Carl Tyler, which many of you probably know from Carl Tyler Chevrolet, into purchasing ground from Sherman Clyde. I don't know if most of you guys know Sherman Clyde. So that entity of Carl and his daughter Sandy are primaries of own the 300 acres directly west of this property. We're kind of out of the loop a little bit, so Carl wasn't aware really of the last neighborhood meeting, so nobody came to that. But we are most interested in developing that land for housing for, albeit Schweitzer employees, growth for Moscow. We have a serious issue in Moscow about shortage as far as residential housing. We're hoping we can fill some of that gap as far as housing is concerned, albeit multifamily residential for employees or residential homes. Anyway, addressing that 300 acres, which is, I said, directly west of that property. I wanted to take the time to introduce you to Carl and Sandy Tyler, who are the principals as far as the ground is concerned. I'm going to read you Jennifer's name. Her name is Tengano, something like that. It's a difficult name, but anyway, Susan Wilson represents us as far as hoping that we can work together to tie Schweitzer's needs into what we're looking for as far as future growth is concerned for Moscow. It takes a long time, to put this stuff together. We want to get our name out there so everybody realizes what we hope to accomplish as far as that ground is concerned. We did Skyview Estates, as I said, 14 years ago. I think I got off Carl's Christmas card list about 12 years ago because it's been slow in development there. But at any rate, we're envision a well-planned residential area that'll be obvious attribute to the city of Moscow. That'll be helpful, we think, as far as Schweitzer Engineering is concerned. To you, Ms. Soltis, we're very, very excited to see you here. And we appreciate Mr. Schweitzer taking the money, time, and effort to be in Moscow, Idaho. I think everybody will say, wow, what a great thing it is. There's no question about that. So if you wouldn't mind, I'd like to have Carl say hi, and Sandy if she wants to, and if Jennifer just say a word or two saying, if anybody needs us, we're here. We want to answer any of the questions. We want to help Schweitzer in every possible way we can to make their move to Moscow, Idaho to be as profitable and as successful as we possibly can help them to do so. So, way to go, city leaders. We give you more accolades if we can figure out how to do it. So, if anybody has any questions of me, I'll be more than happy to answer them.
Are there any questions for Mr. Beebe? No? Thank you.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Carl probably wants to say hi. You want to say hi? So you can say no.
But without ears, hearing aid glasses, Max.
We're the old parts.
I'd like to thank you for giving us the time here. And, my daughter Sandy, she was born here in Moscow quite a few years ago when I came up here to go to college and learned how to wash cars for Gubmix Chevrolet. A couple guys with white hair can probably remember that name. But I had a strong interest in Moscow, the Palouse. We have the Chevy dealership in Lewiston now. And we have a real strong interest in helping this community grow and do as much as we possibly can here. And I appreciate Rick making me aware of what's going on, because I've been in Salmon, Idaho on a horse for the last 3 months. Got a social distance, I've got a ranch down there where since I've turned the dealership over to her, I spend a lot of time out in the mountains, and so I haven't been aware of a lot of the things going on, but I'm really pleased to see Moscow growing and Schweitzer Engineering. That's a huge asset for all of us, and we want to do what we can to make this work, and that's part of the reason that 14 years ago I got involved with Rick out here at Skyview Estates, because we could see a need for it. But at any rate, thank you very much, and I hope we can work together.
Thank you. Does anybody else want this? Oh, yes. Go ahead.
As Rick introduced, my name is Jennifer Tengano, and I work with Susan Wilson. I'm a new addition to her firm. And together we represent Mr. Tyler, who has asked us that we provide the following comments on the proposed annexation, rezone, and comprehensive plan change proposed by Schweitzer. My client owns a property adjacent to and to the west of the subject property. Mr. Tyler is interested in how the development will impact his adjacent property. He would like it to be considered about whether or not there will be requirements regarding access through the property to the adjacent property, as is typical in these types of developments. How will the utilities be installed, planned, and approved so as to ensure that the utilities are available to the adjacent property when it is developed in the future? We understand that you may not have these answers to these questions at this time, but we ask that in your recommendation to the City Council, that you include these recommendations for future consideration, and that they consider how this property will be developed in the future and the impact on adjacent property in regards to access and utilities. And that's it.
Okay. So, anybody have any questions? No. Okay, thank you. Okay, are there others who would like to speak either in favor of, against, or just in general about the proposal? All right, barring that, I will close the public hearing and open it up to deliberation among the commission. Anybody have any questions,
Well,
comments?
I guess I would start out just to say that, gosh, what took you so long? You know, we feel and I'm not speaking for I can't speak for the city, but I've only been around here for 40 or 45 years myself, but we're all proud, I think, of Schweitzer Engineering in the region, and it really is a positive thing, and I think for Moscow to be part of the sort of Pullman-Lewiston combine is really exciting, and so I personally think this is a slam dunk.
I'm very excited about it also. I have to confess, I'm married to an electrical engineer who had a much smaller company here in Moscow, but and in Pullman. Came back to Moscow, but he speaks very highly of Schweitzer, and many of his employees former employees have gone to work there, et cetera. And so I think it's a wonderful employment opportunity for that brings high quality employment and hopefully supported by a quality of life that our community offers. So I think it's great. So, yeah. And it seems like a logical, from our standpoint, in terms of where the land is purchased and in relation to the city limits, et cetera, it's not causing a leapfrog development or a lot of things that would raise our eyebrows a bit. It's a nice, clean sort of addition, I think. So.
And Wendy, I think at least that the fact that it's on Highway 95 coming into Moscow is a real positive thing. I suspect there could be land less obvious, but it's nice to have a gateway, to think of the potential gateway into Moscow. University here,
right.
Corporations that we enjoy. So it seems, I like that aspect of it.
Right. Other comments, or our commissioners who are joining us via Zoom, Rob or Joel, do you have any questions or comments?
Wendy, I do have one question more directed to Mike. I appreciate the comments from the adjacent landowners, but they're kind of asking us to include recommendations that would facilitate development, future development for them. I guess I have some concerns about having any of those kind of recommendations in this particular request. And I just wanted to get Mike's read on that.
I would echo that, Rob. I had a question about it too.
Well, looking at the zoning code as far as conditions that you're able to place on a rezone request, it's really the applicant would have to enter into a development agreement, and it states that conditions, limitations on use and development may be imposed on properties requesting for rezoning, Conditions may be limited, maybe to limit uses to fewer than or those normally permitted under the proposed zone. Conditions and limitations shall be written commitment of the owner or developer. You know, I think that those are more suited for the annexation request and not necessarily the rezone of the comp plan. So if there was a condition like that to be imposed, it would be more appropriate for the city council to impose that condition, just because the commission does not act on annexations. They just recommend appropriate zoning and comp plan designation. So I would say that certainly the council could impose that condition on the annexation, but not necessarily at the Planning and Zoning Commission level.
Thank you for that clarification.
Okay, great. Thanks, Mike.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, well,
This is Joel.
Oh, yes,
I'm very impressed with the proposal. I'm excited about the things that it might imply for the future. Beyond that, I guess I really don't have any questions.
okay.
And I would echo that it's a very exciting project, and I'm so glad to see it. And it's a bright spot in the kind of down year, so something good.
Yeah. Okay, well, are we ready to, I mean, we have a choice of I guess at this point, we've closed the public hearing, and now we need to go ahead and make some motions if people
Do we
are
need
prepared to
two
We
are
need
you
two separate
suggesting two
motions, I would call
motions?
for the, one on, I believe, on the comprehensive plan land use designation without conditions would be one option, or, but we need to first approve the comprehensive plan land use designation. So
I would so move without conditions.
Okay, is that Rob?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. So then we move on to recommending approval of the proposed rezone with no conditions or with some conditions, or however somebody wants to.
Yeah, I'd
frame the
move
This-
to
this is-
recommend approval. Oh, I don't want to get in anybody's way. You Zoom people want to,
We can't
Go ahead.
see you. We need to see you.
yeah,
Yeah.
for some reason, we
ahead,
can't
Mel.
see you.
We need a alternate screen.
Well, we did before.
Yeah, we have, I know.
We've
It's-
had
it's-
it
yeah.
before.
It's
It
just-
should be that way.
He's gonna close it.
Yeah, if we just,
PowerPoint. There we
Yeah.
go.
There they are.
Okay.
there you are. Thank you,
Okay.
Mike. Okay, so where are we? Who's
Did
making the motion?
somebody, did some,
You'll second, thank you, Dennis. You'll second. What are you seconding? What's the motion?
okay, recommend approval of the rezone from ag forestry to motor business, and with appropriate comments from staff on, do we need a separate
We need a
comment?
second, I think a second, separate, you're talking about reason statement.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's see that as a
Okay,
third
okay.
motion, please. Yeah, okay, so,
That's my motion then.
and Dennis seconded it? The second, yes. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, thank you. So we need, why don't I invite Rob to make the third motion, since you were trying to,
So I move that staff prepare the statement of criteria and reason, the reason statement and criteria?
relevant criteria and
Relevant,
standards. Yeah.
sorry.
No, that's okay. I'll put words in your mouth there for a second.
Thank you.
And just-
Okay,
just
is
to
there a
cl-
second?
Madam Chair, just a clarification, that was for both of the actions, correct?
Correct. Yeah, thank you. That, yes, that would be for item 1 and 2, both the approval of the comprehensive plan designation and also approval of the rezone. So is that what you're doing, Rob? You're making a?
Yes,
Yes,
it
okay.
is.
So is there a second?
Second.
Okay, thank you, Mike. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so thank you, all of you, for coming in. And
It's our biggest crowd in a while, so.
Yeah, I know. It's like, what did we say that got everybody here? Okay, and before, I think I made the mistake of not ever having us approve the minutes with a vote. Did I do that?
You did that.
I did? Okay.
We did.
See, I rushed in here with my brain somewhere else, I apologize, but I all of a sudden realized, did I ever call for that? So I knew okay. So, now we move on to, item 4, which is a review of the draft sign code. And Ray will give a presentation. And this is an ongoing discussion that we've been working with for a while, to come into compliance with a Supreme Court case that, required clarification of, use of content-based signs, restrictions.
Y'all come to
Thank
the
you.
city council hearing now. Come to the city council hearing, too.
Yeah, it's
Be careful out there in Salmon. You can get bit by a rattlesnake out there.
no. It's funny, I thought I just got the motions, but not the vote. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I screwed up on that. I got a motion and a second, and I didn't get a vote.
Go ahead.
You can always, you can always go back and take a vote on that.
Okay, yeah, and I realized it when we started into item 2, and I apologize. Okay, so,
Well, before the end of the meeting, we can go back
Right.
and vote.
yeah, okay. Thank you, Mike.
So this is just picking up where we left off last time on some of the discussions regarding their sign code amendments. And I know we went through the entire thing last time, and there were a number of changes that you all wanted to see change to the proposed ordinance. And so a lot of those were in the temporary sign section of the proposed ordinance. So this is what we had, before, and we go through kind of temporary signs where they're permitted, and then we draw a distinction on residential zoning districts, commercial zoning districts, as well as temporary signs located in the public right-of-way. We'll go through the residential zoning districts first. So we had a maximum of 6 square feet of total area per sign shall be allowed per property, and then a maximum of 1 sign per lot, except as provided below in subsection C. Subsection C refers to kind of the period 60 days before and 7 days following an election. And you wanted to see that increased to, we were going to go with maybe a baseline of 2 signs and then have the discussion from there. So in the draft ordinance, we've made that amendment, and so now it reads the maximum of 2 signs are permitted per lot, except as provided in subsection C below. And then we added a new section D onto this so that we were thinking of, it's not just residential uses and residential zoning districts. Like R4 allows professional offices. Oftentimes you have a lot of institutional uses, so city-owned buildings, churches, community centers, other offices that could be located in residential zones, and primarily churches that end up putting up quite a bit of temporary signage to advertise certain type of events. You could have schools as well that put up that type of signage, and so we needed to have some type of mechanism, as we currently do, for some type of temporary signage that maybe doesn't have a size limitation, as long as you can put it up for a limited period of time. And so that's what we've done with subsection D, gone through and stated this is similar to the language that we had in the commercial zoning districts temporary sign section, saying that they're permitted to display more than 2 temporary signs and/or temporary signs which exceed 6 square foot limitation, but they're required to obtain a temporary sign permit which may be displayed for a consecutive period not to exceed 45 days per year, except as provided in subsection C below. So it's given, those properties that opportunity to still have that type of temporary special event signage throughout the year, and it's just imposing the time limitation on that.
Mike, is this where the, Black Lives Matters type signs come in?
this section would be, it wouldn't necessarily be the subsection D, it would be, maximum of
The two
two
signs.
signs per property, 6 square feet in size, and so, yeah, that was the discussion last time, leading up to, 60 days before and 7 days after, obviously, there's unlimited number of campaign signs that
that's
you can
campaigns.
have. We can't call them campaign signs because of the Supreme Court case, but, yeah, you usually have a mixture of, the Black Lives Matter, no matter where you're from, you're our neighbor. You see a number of those signs that are left up year-round. And those types of signs would fall underneath this section. And so as we've increased it from 1 to 2, you could potentially have 2 of those signs year-round.
Yeah,
And then when election season rolls around, you could have unlimited numbers. And so that's what, you wanted the increase last time. And then certainly, we don't have to end at 2, if just in people's observations. Normally, in my own observations, people tend to not have more than 2 year-round. But if there's a reason why we don't necessarily care if it's 3 or 4, we certainly could increase that number.
Okay, and that's where I'm going. I think 2 is too limiting. I think people should have more choice than that. And I think they will self-choose, as was said last time, put one up by the porch maybe, or in the flower bed or something like that. But there are a growing number of types of signs like that, and I would just feel if I were a resident, being told I could only have 2 would be too restrictive.
Okay. Is there a number that you think would be appropriate?
Well, clearly I'm going to say at least 3. I would go with 4. I don't know what other people think. And, is there a mechanism there that if a neighbor felt it was too much, they could complain or something?
I don't think you want to set a situation up
Okay,
for that.
don't want to do that, no.
Who's gonna regulate that?
Another thing is if they had 3, and we're never going to know they have 3 unless somebody does complain. And then if they have to remove one, who's going to decide which one they're going to remove and what spiritual or civic right are we stepping on if we do that?
I guess I see a difference between signs that actually are back towards a porch or in a flower bed, away from the public sidewalk and
Yeah,
stuff
me
that's in
too.
your face all the time. So I just wonder if we're gonna increase the number. If it's necessary, then I would want it to be a certain distance from the sidewalk myself. I mean,
Yeah, and that sounds fine to me.
Well, I think what we talked about last time, and I had it in my notes, and I don't know if I incorporated it in, but I think we're just going to add in the exempt sign section that if you can't see it it's not visible from the street, it doesn't count as a sign. So if
If
somebody
you
wants
can't
to,
read it.
somebody wants to put,
Yeah.
one in their backyard that nobody can
Right,
read except for
right.
visitors of that property,
Right.
I don't think that counts as one of the signs. I think it has to be on display and some portion of the property where you can see it from the street. So
Well, a lot of people, at least for a while, had the sort of kindness type signs, or receptiveness to immigrants, et cetera, close to their front door. It wasn't out in the front lawn right on the sidewalk. And to me, that's different. It's pretty deep within your own personal space. And I don't know, I don't mind that at all. And sometimes you can't even read them because they're too far back, or only for visitors who are coming up the front door. But I guess, is there any way to put a distance on these signs that stay up permanently, really? I mean, they sort of stay up permanently.
He's there till they
it
fall
seems
apart.
fairly clear cut for me. If you can't see it from the street, it's
Yeah.
obvious.
Yeah,
I don't
I
wanna
like, I
be-
like that. part,
I don't necessarily want to be running around with a tape measure.
No, I get it, yeah.
Measuring how far people's
Yeah.
signs are.
Right,
And it really just, the issue with that as well is it just varies from subdivision, from area of town to area of town. I mean, there's
yeah,
in Fort Russell and in areas close to the city core, there's 80-foot right-of-ways. Sometimes the
Right,
property
right.
doesn't even start until halfway into the front lawn.
Right.
Whereas newer subdivisions, the property line's usually right by the sidewalk. So,
Yeah.
it just varies so much throughout town. Some properties don't have sidewalks in certain areas. So, it seems to me like that test of just being visible from the public street would, be a better test of
Okay.
whether or not it counts or not as a
Right.
sign.
Right, okay.
Well, where I live, there's a house next door, and then there's A Street, and then there's a house kitty corner. They've got a Black Lives Matter sign, and I can see it from my yard because it is distinctive. It's black with the white lettering, and you know what it is. That's a long way. And, I'm happy with it. I'm not going to complain about it.
What does everybody else think? To increase it from 2 to something larger, or?
I guess I would be okay with 3.
Others? I think any more than that, we start to see sign litter personally. And
Yes.
it's,
Yeah, I concur with Joel, and I don't think we should go any more than the 3.
okay, yeah.
Okay. Well, I can make that change, and
Mike, I have a question on item D on the screen there. I find the consecutive period 45 days confusing. Does that mean one consecutive period of less than 45 days? Does that mean 45 days in total of perhaps several consecutive periods?
it's intended to be one consecutive period. So, one period that lasts for 45 days, not 45 days spaced out throughout the year.
Well, but then it's not consecutive.
But it is consecutive.
It's a consecutive period, so that would be consecutive period not to exceed 45 days.
So that
Then
can
you can
only
take
be
it down and
one,
put it back up. a
only
couple
one
days.
such period then.
It says per year.
Well, yeah. Oh, okay,
So
yeah.
is that only one period then? Only one use of the sign?
Correct.
One of the things I think we talked about last year was the notion of cumulative versus consecutive. And I shared Joel's confusion about it. So if you could put a sign in for 45 days, could you take it out and then put it in for another 45 days later in the year? Or are you limited to a cumulative of 45 days per year?
I agree with you, Rob. You just stated my concern much better than I did, but that's, I think it's a bit confusing.
Well, you just read the statement, Rob. It says consecutive period not to exceed 45 days per year.
Yeah, but they're putting cumulative in front of the 45, so you have both, consecutive period not to exceed accumulation of 45 days per year, something like that. However, Rob just said it.
I mean, we could certainly change the language, but it's a consecutive period, can't exceed 45 days per year. I mean, a consecutive period is one period.
Yeah.
We could change it to one, instead of A, we can put 1 in front of it. Or a single.
Yeah, that would be better.
Or a single.
That would
Limited
help.
to one, because it does read like
there
you
you
can
go.
go 45 days, take a few days off, go another 45
Yeah.
consecutive.
One
Yeah.
consecutive
You could do that,
period.
that would be at the last day of the year, because it says per year. It's pretty cut and dry.
Yeah.
But yeah, whatever you guys want, if you want one there, I'd be fine.
We could certainly replace A with 1.
Yeah.
and-
Yeah, that's clearer.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah, that would
I
be good.
agree.
Yeah, that would do it. Okay, other comments, questions on this item? Okay, thank you, Mike.
Okay. And I don't believe we had any changes to, so this is commercial zoning districts, 32 square feet, total sign, area per sign, one sign permitted per lot. And then we have the same kind of election exemption, and then the same temporary sign permit allowance for the period not to exceed 45 days per year. So this, I don't believe there's anything that's really changed in this section. We did make some changes in temporary signs in the city right away. So previously we had, I think it was 4 signs are permitted per event, which the signs are advertising. So that was subsection B, which previously was 4, and we've upped that to 6. And then we've added subsection C, which states that a maximum of 1 sign is permitted per street intersection. So that's to eliminate, multiple signs per intersection, kind of causing clutter. And then then there was, yes, Rob.
Sorry, going back to the, sorry, I should have caught this before, the commercial zoning districts on item D, probably want to make the same change we did for residential, where we place the word 1 in front of
Sure. Yep.
A.
Yep, I can do that.
Okay.
Good.
And then there was just one more change, minor change that occurred within this section, and it was subsection H there. A sign should not be placed upon, and previously it didn't say city property, it just said city-owned or maintained structure in the public right-of-way. So it had all that language except for we've inserted city property in there because we had the discussion previously about, well, what if it's, obviously a city-owned park, you can't put those signs up, but what if there's a sliver of city property that is similar to the right-of-way? Just wanted to make that, explicitly clear. That city property is not allowed for placement of those types of signage. So we've made that change as well.
I like that.
And I believe that was all the changes that we had talked about last time. There was one other item that I wanted to kind of bring your attention to, and it refers to kind of what we already talked about before at this meeting, those church, school, institutional type uses within residential zones. And so kind of going through over the years, we've received numerous requests, mainly from churches, to allow kind of, and it's mainly, these institutional uses that take up a larger area. They have larger properties within residential areas. And, they've wanted to, usually that right now the square footage is pretty limiting as far as some type of freestanding or monument sign in residential zones. So it's limited to 20 square feet right now, and, which is 5x4 sign. Which is of moderate size. We have to take into consideration the neighborhood that the properties are located in as well. But you think of like the Nazarene Church that takes up a whole city block, and the scale of the sign on that property. And so, thinking about allowing those type of institutional uses to have an increase in the amount of signage that they have, possibly increasing that to maybe 32 square feet. So looking at kind of comparable zoning districts that are kind of on the low end of the commercial districts. So residential, office, and neighborhood business, those are 32 square feet for the maximum freestanding or monument. And maybe just going with that to say that, institutional uses could have a maximum size of 32 square feet, but then also allowing an option for a conditional use permit up to 48 square feet in size. So those circumstances where you have the Nazarene property that's one whole, block squared, that they could allow for an opportunity for a public hearing, and the neighbors could have public input, and the Board of Adjustment could make a decision on allowing a sign of that size. And so that was one other thought that we had had over the years, just because of the amount of times we've been contacted by the institutional uses wanting a larger sign. And we could insert that probably in the table, I think is where it would be the most appropriate, but we could take a look at where it would best fit within the ordinance, if you were receptive to that.
I think with the conditional use permit, it makes sense.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I think it's hard to make a rule about these things with institutions. Like you say, some churches, let's say, or a school may take up a much larger area, and it seems like it should be a conditional use. It would looked at as how it fits in the environment. When a institution takes up an entire block, you'd think they would have a different set of choices than somebody who's just in another block down the street. So I like the conditional use quality. I think it's something that the neighborhood needs to look at.
Okay.
Well, and I like moving from 20 square feet to 32 square feet before they have to apply for a conditional use to go bigger. It allows them a certain latitude, but the ability to move on with a little more work if they need it.
And oversight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
so if
yeah,
that sounds good, I can go ahead and make that
Okay.
addition. And then we'll clarify the exemption as well for the signs. We'll work on some language there for the signs that you can't see from the public street. And then bring it back next time, take a look at it, and then still need to run this through legal department just to make sure that we're good with, we're following the law as far as the Supreme Court case. So, and then it'll take some time, but our next meeting's in November, and then we won't have another till December. So we'll have another review, and then should, over that course of that month of November, should bring it back fairly complete and ready to go in December.
Okay. Sounds good. Thank you, Mike.
Well, it was a lot of work, given the Supreme Court case. All the stuff they put on is for that, so thank you, Mike, you did a good
Yeah,
job.
Yeah,
You did a good
nice
job.
work, Mike, thank you.
Okay. Well, our next item is, Joel, is the Transportation Commission meeting report. Joel, do you have anything to
Yes,
report?
the Transportation Commission met on October 8th, and the discussion was, the first item was a discussion of the changes to the code which governs what the Transportation Commission is. I think I said in an earlier meeting that the current system designated about 15 different not members, but other non-voting members for the Transportation Commission, and we have greatly reduced that number to basically a representative of the University of Idaho and ex officio membership, I believe, to the director of the public transport system. The perhaps more significant item was a discussion of street standards. The Planning and Zoning Commission recently made some changes in the use of the 28-foot street standard. Originally, there was a condition on that it only applies in residential areas to streets that are cul-de-sacs or streets that are not expected to become major thoroughfares. Well, streets that are not expected to go through. I believe that at some previous meeting that we, in fact, Planning and Zoning Commission, was suggesting that there should those conditions on the 28-foot street be the conditions ought to be removed, and that so the Transportation Commission took up the topic and basically agrees that it's probably appropriate to make greater use of the 28-foot neighborhood street. We can still, to the extent that a subdivision has our minor arterials, major arterials, the wider, I believe 32-foot street standard continues to apply, but so long as it's a neighborhood street, it can be used without restriction, and Transportation Commission is comfortable with the Planning and Zoning Commission's suggestion that that be done. So, and basically that's it. The next meeting of the Transportation Commission will be on the second Thursday of November. And I have not seen an agenda for it yet.
Okay, thank you for the update, Joel.
Any questions on my garbled description of the 28-foot?
You're just extending the application to or
Right.
considering that, right, to other circumstances besides just,
Removing some of the restrictions that are
Right.
currently on it.
right. I think that, to me, that's it seems like compared to many other cities or small towns even, that our streets are pretty wide. I mean, so that, I think that sounds like a good, for secondary streets. Yeah.
Totally unrelated to that. I was out walking today and walked down Hayes Street. The one-way section of Hayes. And thought was occurring to me, why don't we allow or even promote one-way streets in residential neighborhoods? Does P&Z have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I certainly have a thought on it. I don't know if you remember, we used to have a member in P&Z that was against government regulations, and he loved the idea of a smaller street that didn't require so much investment. And if you walk down or ride your bike down Hayes, it's one of the most lovely, except for Wendy's Street C, it's one of the most beautiful little streets because people aren't racing back and forth on it. You know what direction they're going. When people get up on Hayes Street in the morning, they can go out and get their newspaper and talk to their neighbor across the street without shouting. And of course, I live on Hayes Street, the other part of Hayes Street, where you couldn't talk to your neighbor. You have to have a foghorn. So it's a really beautiful thing, and I don't know where we could find those kinds of streets, but we could be, if we could have a kind of a development, you can't have a bunch of those little streets, but I ride down it on my bike on a regular basis on my way to Safeway, and it's marvelous. And I'm sure most of you probably never go on it because, why would you?
Great running street, it's on my route when
It's really,
when I'm able
yeah,
to.
it's very special. I think it's something we could talk about in the future in a planning session, Joel.
Right.
It's really.
Well, looking at various types of street cross-sections that, quite a few communities have those out there, and other urban design materials show different configurations in it. Maybe it's worth looking at sometime, in more detail.
I think it's a topic I'll bring up with the Transportation Commission.
And it's the only street that I know in Moscow in which I'm relatively pleased that it doesn't have sidewalks. In other words, in my mind,
Right.
if you don't have sidewalks, you're not civilized. And Hayes Street is so bucolic that you can have your kids playing out in the street and you know that cars aren't going to be going 30 miles an hour on it. And so for the only place in Moscow where I go down the street and there's no sidewalk and I don't feel irritated about it. So that's just a feeling I have. But I use that street so much that I probably use it more than anybody in this neighborhood, just because it's a lovely street to ride your bike on. Thanks, Joel.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so I failed to have everybody vote on the minutes, so we had an approval, a seconded motion, and all in favor of approving the minutes from September 23rd, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Oh, okay, thank you. So, my apologies. Okay, and announcements. I know, Mike, you were trying to set up a field trip for our next in-person meeting on November 3rd? Or 4th, excuse me, November 4th.
Yeah, the 4th. I'm still waiting for final confirmation from Scott, but he said that he does have some luminaires and a generator that he could haul out there and we could take a look at it. So just wanted to confirm with him that date would work, but it's looking like, the next November 4th meeting, probably around 6 p.m.
It'll be dark.
And we've got daylight savings ends on, I believe, the 1st or 2nd, so it should be dark about that time. So, tentatively planning on that, and then as soon as I get confirmation from him whether or not that will work, we'll make the arrangements and send out notification to everybody.
And so I'm presuming that we'll be driving from location to location, or is it more?
I think we're just going to meet at the North Couplet, where the new, because it's close, it's only 3 blocks away, and we can meet there and then walk back over and have our meeting at 7.
Okay.
And conduct any more business that we have, but I think an hour should be fine, and probably meet there at 6 p.m. and do a few different displays for number of lumens and fixtures, and then and then head back to City Hall.
So North Couplet, are you talking about Homecoming? Homecoming Street?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, well are there any other announcements from staff?
None from staff.
Anybody else? Any correspondence?
Wendy, I don't know if I'm sure everybody's paying attention to it, but boy, the development on A Street is just shocking. I mean, 3 or 4 blocks of big wall, and it's a major shift in what traveling on A Street's going to be like I didn't realize it was such a dramatic
I've sort of avoided it, so I'll have to go take a look.
Yeah, so if you haven't seen it, you should go by, and those of us who race up and down the highway, it seems like the highway's getting more and more conflicted all the time coming in from Pullman. So there's a whole ton of us that shoot up on and drive on C Street across town. There it is, Michael. We gotta think about C Street because it's getting to be a racetrack.
Oh, you're talking about
on
West
C.
C, yeah, West,
Yeah.
yeah.
And then, of course, we all try and figure out how to get around Rosars. And then, because those are people that are heading out of town or going,
Going out D Street, you mean, so they
but
queue up at the
that's
light
just
there.
another part of this east-west effort across
Right.
town. It'll be fun to see what it's like. It's gonna open. Don't you think it's gonna open momentarily?
In the next couple of weeks, they have it paved. I know that they're just pouring some more sidewalks on that stretch, and then it should be complete. So, yeah, in the next couple of weeks is my understanding.
I saw stripes going on Line Street today, so they're getting close.
Oh, okay, well. All right, well, I guess, thank you, everybody, meeting adjourned, so.
Okay.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.